Okay, Job part 2. So remember I asked you last time to tell me whether you were satisfied with God's answer and whether you thought there was a happy ending. So I'm going to open the floor up to you a little bit now. I'm going to gather up your what you've been feeling as you've been reading the text. You did excellent reading assignments, by the way. I thought they were really good. So I think this class is actually pretty good in terms of the maturity, spiritual maturity. Sometimes you teach a bunch of immature students and it's such an agony. So I'm so glad you guys are here, right? You guys are pretty mature, I can tell from your responses. So that's good. So let's begin with those who thought the answer was pathetic. Put your hand up if you didn't like God's answer to Job. Okay. And Zoom people, let me see. Put your hand up. Faces, please. Shakli, Donas, Chahal, Ali. Don't make me take care of you. Like, don't make me babysit you. You know I got thousands of things to do over here. Okay, good. All right, excellent. So let's begin. Let me hear you out. Let's hear the... actually, I didn't even look at you. So how many of you thought it was a bad answer? Okay, so that was you. 1, 2, 3. That's it? Just 3, 4, 5. All right, let's begin. Tell us, what was so bad about this answer? Let me hear you out. Well, let's start from over here. Who was it? See? Go ahead.
I mean, for one, there is this one thing that Joe mentioned in the dialogue where he said that there are people that are bad that never really they never really get the punishment that they deserve. And I feel like God's answer still doesn't really answer that, that aspect of the question.
Okay, very good, right? So C is saying to those who are watching here that God doesn't answer Job's question, right? Make sure you write these down. And this is actually test answer, right? So even your comments are actually already accurate. So yes, first point on the bad answer that God gave Job, right? Is this notion that he doesn't answer the question, right? He's the perfect, you know how you do a test and you have a question that you don't really know the answer and then you kind of talk about everything else that you know? Seems like God is doing that, right? He's kind of bullshitting his way through this whole ordeal with Job, right? He's kind of saying, well, I'm going to just ignore your question and talk to you about all of my exploits, right? So kind of avoiding the question. Excellent. This is the first problem, right? Seems like. All right, let's continue down. Who else was over here? Go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of said that God, he's kind of dyslexic, like he takes away Job's kids, but then he gives him an entirely new set of kids.
Oh, yeah, that.
About his past, kids.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is you're talking even about the ending. So we'll get to that. This is that ending. So keep that stored up. We'll come to that. So he mentioned how can you replace the kids with a new set of kids, right? So no, this is a problem. But this is not yet the answer, right? This is the ending. Next, go ahead, Goldstein.
I also thought that it was kind of a non-answer. Like he didn't address his question. He didn't give any information. And even more so, I thought that it was kind of a rude answer.
Okay, very good.
Because what it made me think of was kind of if a parent is, let's say, abusive towards their kid, doesn't feed their kid or whatever, and then the kid starts complaining, oh, I'm hungry, I need this, and the parent's like, what you mean? I gave birth to you and I give you a house and I give you a bed, so you should just stop complaining. I'm more powerful than you anyway.
Okay, very good, excellent, right? The tone is problematic, right? We have to remember, Job has just lost his whole family. Right? This is somebody who just went through hell, and God, instead of being a little bit sympathetic, he's just booming forth about his greatness, right? Absolutely insensitive, right, to the plight and the fragility that Job, the state, right, the fragile state probably that he is in, right? Seems like, right? So absolutely, the tone is problematic. And going further, go ahead, Amoroso. Yes. Yes.
It feels like kind of patronizing and just like a real display of power, sort of again building on the parent thing of like, oh, I do all this for you. Like God goes on for a very long time about these amazing feats, and it's like, it just seemed like a little unnecessary. We really like rubbing it in Job's face, like how divine he is, and obviously like Job isn't anything.
Okay. Absolutely, right? Authoritarian tone, because I said so attitude, right? This is all rubbing us the wrong way, right? As we're reading this. Absolutely. Inoyatov?
So can I take the other side of the point?
Not yet. I'm getting there. Anybody else against? Zoom people, anybody want to add to the against crowd? Raise your virtual hand if you want to talk. Go ahead, Mahmoud. Go ahead.
I also think that I wasn't really satisfied with God's answer, because I feel like it was very unfair if you're confronted with somebody who's claiming to be all powerful and to uh, be able to do all of these things. Obviously, you're going to very easily submit, and that's what Job did. So I don't think Job was given an adequate ability to sincerely show his faith. I think he just showed his faith because he was kind of just like, okay, I have to. This guy's threatening me.
Yeah, very good. You mentioned how Job reacts. This is also an indication, right? How does Job react? He falls silent, which is very uncharacteristic, right? We're very surprised. Some of you actually pointed it out. Like, why does he all of a sudden not, why doesn't he continue the discussion, right? He's like, oh, okay, I'm dust and ashes, and he kind of withers at the end of the story. So this is indicative also of how he received the response, and how the response maybe was a withering response, or at least he received it like that. So very good. So all good. Absolutely, the text is on your side. But remember, we are dealing with wisdom literature, right? So remember I told you, with wisdom literature, everything is subtle. Nothing is obvious. So the obvious always hides something else. Remember when we read the prologue, how we saw how, the obvious, like, oh yeah, Job is a good man, right? And then we started to dig a little bit, and we saw that behind that beautiful portrait of Job as good and tam and yashar, right? As what was it? Innocent and just, right? We saw a different kind of Job when we scratched the surface a little bit, right? So here too, we have to scratch the surface of this text, right? There is a subtlety in the text, and there is a whole different drama going on in the response between the lines, right? So let me hear some of you first, and then I'll bring you what I have prepared for to kind of decipher this answer. So let me hear anybody who thought it was a good answer. Let's go there now. Okay, Michal, and I think Yatov, kind of. Okay, just two people? Zoom people? Anybody thought it was a good answer? Okay, Epstein, we'll get to you. Very good. All right, starting with Michal, go ahead.
So here's why I thought it was a good answer. Because even though I agree with you guys that the tone was angry, some of it was a little over the top, but I think that towards the end God kind of forgave Job, but before he did that, he had to make sure Job knew who he was kind of talking to. God had to make it clear that he was still God, and he's still on a much higher level than Job, before he was able to give him the forgiveness that he knew that he deserved. I think that deep down God knew that Job was right, but as God, you can't just put yourself down to the level of a human. So he still had to assert himself in his downfall. Okay. But he ultimately forgave him.
All right, so translation to Zoom people, right? So God put Job back in his place, right? Basically, Job had to remember that he was still a human being and God was God. Job kind of went a little too high up on the ladder, on the hierarchy, right? So God had to be like, yo, you're here, I'm here, okay, now we can talk. So I don't know if I agree with that, but point taken. Yes, Yatov.
So I think that I would agree that the answer is not morally sufficient. I think that Job poses the question as a moral question. I don't think God's response is meant to be a moral justification of what happened. The way I see it is that God is what the text is trying to convey is the inherent injustice of reality, and a precursor to understanding and coming to terms with that is understanding your own place in the grand scheme of things. Okay. And as humans, we tend to think that the whole world centers around us. We think our consciousness is the center of all being, but the reality is that we're just a minuscule part of a much grander, larger universe. So maybe that's what God's trying to convey with all of this flexing.
Nice. Okay, good. So putting Job into the cosmos, right? You're not it's true. Job kind of acted like the center of the universe. When other people were suffering, Job was not complaining. I didn't hear Job complain when other people were suffering around him. When it hit him, then he's like, whoa, 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 stop everything, right? So in a way, God is telling him, you are just here in a speck, right? You're not that important, right? Remember this. You thought all of a sudden the world has to stop because you went through this pain, right? But actually, remember that you're just one among a whole cosmos. So yes, absolutely, that could be what God is.
The supreme deity himself is the only one, at least I think in the context of that text, that's torturing Job. Not everybody is getting it to that much of a degree.
Yes, absolutely, right? This is really, yeah, so she's saying here the torture is specific, right? God's kind of allowed it, and there was a clear target. So it's different from the rest of us who are just going through the accidents of life, right? So very good. So here's what I would like to, I'm going to build a little bit on what you guys said. I'm going to go with the idea that there is something in the response that deserves to be explored, right? Since it is a wisdom text, we know that the surface, right, is not going to give us the obvious answer. We have to dig. And so here's what I want to do with you today. So first of all, I want to talk about two things with regards to this response, the tone and the content, right? So let's go first to the tone. Oh, sorry, I think I skipped Epstein. Sorry, let's go back to Epstein. Go ahead, say what you had to say.
So it's not an answer, it's a response. He's not interested in answering Job's question. Why? Because he's God. He doesn't have to. Job is looking for reasons, but he's God. So we're always looking for a reason, why, what, where, and not always are we either deserving of one or even need one. We're people who don't like the unknown, right? We fear the unknown. So when God comes and says, you don't have to know, that bothers us, right? We see that as a bad answer, but really we don't need an answer. Also, Job comes up, I'm repeating what someone said before, he comes from this very high place, and God says, who's ignorant words? And that's what Job is. He's ignorant. And God goes into a very long explanation as to why he's ignorant, right? He wasn't there when he was creating the earth. He wasn't there when reason itself was created. Job's using God's own tools, but doesn't know how to use them.
Very good.
So he's always a step behind.
Okay, excellent. So an invitation, right, to dwell in the mystery. Job wants a clear answer, and God is saying there are things, you cannot understand everything in a way, right? That would be one way of answering that. So nicely said, Epstein. Okay, so now let's go into some of the explorations that I have made of the text, among, of course, with other people, right? I have inspired myself from other things too. So the tone, right? So a lot of us, right, we're Westerners. We tend to be, politically correct, and we want everybody to be polite, and God doesn't seem polite, right? What we're forgetting is that here in this text, we're in the Middle East. Now, I don't know, so the closest to our culture here in the United States, to the culture over there at the time, is hip-hop culture. Okay, so I'm going to give you a scene that you will recognize right away from the hip-hop culture, and this is exactly what is taking place right now in the text. How many of you have witnessed on TV or live a rap battle? Okay, so I saw it in the movie. I didn't see it live, obviously, but I saw it in the movie Eminem, right, long time ago. Have you seen it? Anybody? Yes. So this is my only contact. So, but a rap battle, right? You have two rappers, and they're going to tear each other down. But it's kind of like it's kind of a battle where it's not like meaning to destroy. It's like a sport. It's like a wrestling match, where each one is going to affirm themselves in the face of the other. This is a rap battle. Job has said his thing, and now God is like, all right, yo, my turn. And he's like, and he challenges him, right? Look at the beginning, right? Let's go there right now when he begins, right? Where is it? Help me out. Where is the answer? Here we are, right? This is, if somebody would put this as a rap, it would work, right? Who is this whose ignorant words smear my design with darkness? When you start a rap battle, you immediately cut your opponent down, right? I can't do it, sorry, but it would be wonderful. I would be willing to give amazing extra credit for someone to translate what has been going on here in a rap battle. Like, I would give at least 5 points extra credit. For someone who can put this stuff into a rap battle for me, so I can have something to illustrate to future students, right? But he starts up, right, very aggressive. Why? Because he has been aggressive. So he's basically meeting Job on his level. He's like, oh, really? That's what you think of me? All right, let's go. Let's do this, right? And then he begins, da-da-da-da-da-da, same tone as Job. Not that much different. Job was very, very aggressive. And God is kind of meeting him on his level and saying, you want to do this? All right, let's do this. Let's go, right? And he takes him outside, and they begin this kind of sparring, which actually is there in a way. This is a way to honor Job, right? This is a way to tell Job, I see you as my equal. So this is kind of going in a different direction than some of you, right? God is not coming from above here. God is saying, Oh, you want to talk? Let's talk. And I'm going to talk to you unfiltered, uncut. I'm not going to wear gloves. I'm not going to walk on eggshells. I'm going to be as real with you as you were real with me. And we're going to talk for real, man to man, right? So really here, what you should jot down is that what we have here is really God meeting Job as an equal, as a sparring partner. And remember, I told you, this is typical of the Hebrew Bible, right? Remember I told you the story of Abraham and Noah, right? Noah just submits, right? Does what God says. Abraham responds, disagrees, is in conflict, challenges. So you can sense how God would be pleased, right, with this guy on earth talking back at him, right? So he comes down and he's like, yeah, let's do this. And there's a kind of energy there, right? And notice, right, when he says this on page 79, stand up now like a man, right? I will question you. Please instruct me. He's being ironic, right? He's making fun of him, right? Please instruct me, you who know so much, right? This is part of the sparring, the battle, okay? So I kind of want you to see it in this perspective, right? That it is more of a rap battle, a sparring between equal partners, and God is kind of going to now, he's going to say, oh, you want to talk? I'll talk. We'll talk. Let's talk, right? And now let's go into the content, right? So here, what we need to do in order to decipher this, everything is hidden, right? We cannot tell what God is trying to do from this big landscape of animals, right? Basically, God is giving a zoology lesson to Job. This animal, this animal, that. And we might be thinking, who gives a damn? Why is he talking about animals, right? So what he's actually doing is acting like a painter. What he's doing in front of Job, I don't know if you can imagine Michelangelo painting the 16th chapel, right? This huge landscape, right? And God is kind of has this huge wall, right? And he begins to paint. Here's this, and here's that, and here's this. And you're seeing this whole wildness of nature, all these remote animals, these animals we usually don't see. And he's making this amazing landscape. And our task is to read the subliminal message that is hidden in that landscape. In other words, God is making a statement. Through these images, God is saying something. Are you following? Okay, let me say that again so you can write it down. Through the whole images, it's as though God is painting something to Job. He's making a huge painting, a huge landscape. Through the images that he chooses, he's trying to say something to Job about himself, about life, about the cosmos, about Job, right? And our task is to decipher what is God trying to say through these images. And so let's explore together a little bit the images that God is using. So we know there are a number of animals. Now, what kind of animals is he describing or focusing on? Is he talking about the chickens, the goats, the cows? Okay, what kind of animals? How are they different from the chickens, the sheep, the cows that we are familiar with? Huh? Okay, so we have huge animals, right? So, amazing, huge, like dinosaurs, right? I think there's even one that could really fit the description of a dinosaur. See, you wanted to add?
I'm saying like monster.
Okay, so you have a lot of, so yeah, some of you really strong. There's not only those, but it's not just some kind of a, what do you call it, horror movie, right? you're changing my painting into a horror movie. So yes, you do have a crazy big animals, but what are the other types of animals that are mentioned, and how are they different from the goat, the chicken, and the sheep that we are familiar with, technically? Yes.
Are they all predator animals?
No, not all, because you have the donkey, you have yes, you have a few predators. You have the ostrich, they're not really predators. So, but there's something else. You're not seeing the difference. Inoyato. Yes, right. Oh, sorry, Epstein. I keep on not seeing you. Okay. Yes. Make sure this is very important. Most of the animals described in this painting, in this landscape, are wild animals. He's saying something. Right? Well, we're going to try and decipher what in a second. But for now, we're just taking note of the images he's using. Most of them are wild animals, right? If you look anywhere, I'm going to read here, right? Do you tell the antelope, right, to calve? This is somewhere in the desert, right? Who unties the wild donkey, right? Again, this is not tame. The wild ox, the horse, the ostrich. These are animals that are not tame. They're wild. They're out there. They're far away. They're out of reach, right? Epstein. would you like to add?
I was going to say, before he even gets to the animals, he goes through something a little more delicate, is that he explains the days of creation. If you read the Old Testament, right, you have the beginning of the Bible, right? We have the 7 days of creation. And if you look closely at the paragraphs, he explains each and every one as he goes through them, right? He separates the waters, he separates light and dark. I mean, it's in a very poetic way, but he goes through that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he follows the same order. This is interesting. You guys can jot this down. In the story here, he's mimicking the very ancient story, which is found many books before that, the story of the creation of the world. He's following the same order. The heavens and the earth, the waters, the earth, the vegetables, the vegetation, animals, and so forth. So there is a meaning to that. Why is the author alluding to the creation story here in this context where Job has lost everything to death? Why is the author alluding to creation? This is also very important. Yes. Very good. So now we're getting to the interpretation. So hold that thought. That's good. That's the idea, right? So keep right now we're just doing an inventory, right, of all of the images, and then we're going to try to decipher what is going on, what's God trying to say, right? So we have the allusion to creation, we have the wildness of the animals. I hope you noticed also, or you want to add, Yatov? No, you noticed also the sense of space, right? Cosmic space, especially in the beginning, right, when he talks about planning the earth, the depths of the ocean, where the light is, the far away. So there's also a sense of expansion, right? That you didn't that is new compared to where we were with Job, right? Stuck in the suffering and in the pain, and he's just stuck in himself. And now explosion of space, right? There's an expansion taking place. Okay. Any other metaphors you want to point out also on the Zoom that before we start interpreting? Anybody else? Yes, Michel.
I mean, like now that you're kind of talking about it, I feel like maybe him describing all the wild animals that he created is showing that he unlocked like the wild part of Job, like from the timid.
Good. You guys are already interpreting. All right, let's go there. Let's do it. All right, what does it mean? What's going on? So yes, absolutely, I love it. And then I'll come to you, Amaroso. She's looking at me like, wait a second. Right, absolutely. First interpretation, and then I'll give you mine. But first interpretation. It seems like God here is unlocking something. Job was tame. Job was domesticated, right? Job was walking the line, doing everything right. He had no emotions. He was a robot. And when God alludes to this wildness, it's as though he's appealing to Job's inner wildness and saying, free yourself. Be free, be wild, roam the earth. Stop sitting here in this little narrow space of your rules, of your religion, of your piety, right? Explode, move out of this narrow space into the world. Don't be afraid of the world. Don't be afraid to go to forbidden, far away, dangerous places, right? Don't be afraid to live. I believe this is the first lesson we're getting there, right? First lesson, God is telling Job, free yourself. Let your wildness come out. Stop being tame and following the rules like a tame animal, like a tame donkey or like a tame sheep, right? Be wild. Be free. Don't be afraid to live. Don't be afraid to suffer. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Enter the circle of life. Right? I tell students sometimes when we study this text, if you want to get a sense of what's going on, listen to Beyonce's, is it Beyonce's? Yes, there's two songs you should listen to tonight. The Circle of Life, which is, I guess, Elton John, no? In the Lion King, right? This is Elton John, right? Is it Elton John? And then the beautiful masterpiece by Beyonce called Spirit, I think. Spirit? Somebody help me. Is it? Thank you. Okay, right. That song, Spirit, is so, for me, evocative of what's going on here. She really, I mean, if I were to put this text into song, I would do that, right? Like, exact. So, homework, right? Circle of Life, Spirit by Beyonce, Circle of Life by Elton John. If you want to get a sense of the atmosphere, right? The spirit of this text. So, that's the first thing we're getting, right? Stop being so constrained. And now, Amoroso, go ahead.
Sort of connection to the creation story is that it is sort of like a new beginning for Job.
Excellent.
In the sense like showing that, you know, sort of the storm has passed and now
Yes.
moving on.
Very good, right? So she's mentioning, right, how the allusion to the creation story speaks to a new beginning. God seems to be telling Job, this is the moment of a new beginning. Now, let me expound on that, right? Anytime you go through any dark time, this is always the prelude to a new beginning. Just know that, right? Anytime you're going through the night, this is always the prelude to a new day. This is a law of nature. Anytime you're suffering or going through a tough time, this is always a sign that you're transforming into somebody new, that your life is moving into the next level, right? We don't, if you don't suffer, we stay in the same place. If we didn't suffer in this life, we would never change or transform or grow. That's just a fact of life. It is the suffering and the dark times of our lives which move us towards ever new beginnings and ever more powerful resurrections, right? So maybe what God is saying, right? One of the subliminal messages that we have in this text is that God is telling Job, you thought this was the end of your life. You thought everything was over. And what is actually happening is that you were being rebirthed as a new individual. And we saw that. How did Job become? Who is the new Job? We talked about that last time. Remind me. Who is this new Job that has been birthed out of the suffering? Remind me. 3 points. See if you remember. Yes?
Wisdom is
No. Well, yes, but not the 3 points. It's true, but not Inoyatov and then Peralta.
He's passionate, authentic.
Yes. So passionate, right? He moves from robotic to passionate. Let's go over this. This is
Now wise.
almost. He was confused, but now, no, he wasn't confused. He was clear, but now he's confused, right? And that was the last one.
From submissive to
Yes, submissive to rebellious. We have a Job which has emerged who is extremely powerful, right? And we're going to see more about this transformation. But here we have a Job, first of all, who has been born into a human being. Instead of being a robot, he has emerged as a man. And God acknowledges this when he says, stand up like a man. He's saying, you are now a man. Before, you were a puppet. You were a robot. You were a toy. Now you're a real man. So, and we'll see more when we talk about the epilogue, about the transformation. But we are seeing that through the suffering, actually any suffering we go through is the crucible for our rebirth. Anytime you're going through a bad time, you are actually being rebirthed into a better version of yourself. If, of course, you suffer in the right way, right? There are right ways of suffering and wrong ways of suffering, right? But Job clearly, he really went through the suffering. He didn't try to escape it. He faced it. And this is why he grew. When we don't grow out of our sufferings, because we do not face it. We escape our sufferings. If you're constantly escaping your sufferings, you cannot grow. But the moment you say, okay, I'm suffering, and I'm just going to do this, right, is when you will allow for growth and transformation. Okay, great. Let's continue. Anything else? What do we learn about God in this landscape that we didn't know before? What do we learn about God? Yes.
I feel like we learned a more compassionate human side to God, and what you have pointed out with him coming down to those levels rather than him maintaining the I am almighty higher than thou kind of mindset, as well as the confirmation of an all-knowing God, because also what you had said about the darkness being that road to your light or the transformation kind of thing. It also implies that God knew exactly what he was doing with Job's situation. It was to grow him, not to destroy him in a sense. So it also, I guess, confirms that God was introducing a more human, loving aspect.
Very nice, right? We learned that inasmuch as God is the creator, right? Which is what the text is reminding us, right? God is the creator. Meaning whatever is happening is in the grand design, right? There is a design, there is a plan, there is a direction, right? It seems random, but actually it isn't. And we see that with Job. It felt random. All of a sudden, boom, 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 everything is gone, right? But now we're starting to see everything come together. And Job even is starting to see, I see that there was actually a path in the darkness that I was stumbling on, right? Even though I couldn't see it, but now looking back, I see it, right? Very nice. Anything else we learn about God from, for example, the animals? What kind of God do you get? What's the sense you get of God? Not just Job, like you mentioned, but of God by seeing these wild animals. What does this tell you about?
He's merciful.
I guess you had to do that, right, Epstein? I was completely gonna miss you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. What do you mean merciful, Epstein? What do you mean by that?
Well, you can see when he does this, he says he helps out each animal, right? He takes care of each animal's needs. There's nobody else, right? As people, we take care of each other, but the animals in the wild, they're all by themselves, right? So God is the one, he feeds lions, he helps the antelope, gives birth. He does everything in nature, which is actually shows him to be a merciful God, not this, I don't know, vengeful one that it would seem to come out down on Job. No, we actually see that he's merciful, and Job is just self-obsessed with himself.
Okay, yes, very good. Right, so what we're getting here is a sense of the tough love, I would say. If we're going to use the word merciful, I would like to use more the term tough love, right? God, in a way, is like those wild animals too, and that's the third point, right? God himself is not tame, right? We just saw in the first point, Job is invited to not be tame, right? And then we saw in the second point, let's review. What was the second point? So first point was Job is invited to explore life. The second point, what was it? Oh yes, that the creation, right? This is a new beginning. And third point, God himself is wild. And this is something that Job did not know in the beginning. The Job in the beginning thought that God could be manipulated by just doing the right thing. If I keep all the commandments, God will bless me. Boom, vending machine. I put a coin and out comes my, whatever, Snickers bar, right? So God is saying, you cannot control me. You think you can control me with your piety, with your rules? You think you can make me do things for you that you can pull the strings here, right? God in a way is saying, you cannot control what I do with you, right? And I am not just there to bless you. I am also there sometimes to curse you. And this is a difficult pill to swallow. Let me say it again. God is saying, I'm not only there to bless you, I'm also sometimes there to curse you, to challenge you, to put you through stuff. Why? Out of my infinite mercy, so that you will come out of being this, like you were saying, Epstein, this selfish, self-centered, right, center of the universe, and you will become Job, the man, right? So we have to, what the text is teaching us, which is so profound, and we resist this teaching. I just saw a comment on my YouTube channel after this lecture. I don't know if you saw it, but the person was like, yeah, worst book in the Bible. What God would do this to, you saw that, what God would do this to his, believers. A merciful God. If we did not go through suffering, like I said before already, we would never become the better versions of ourselves. Suffering for some of us is the only way. Some of us are already, honestly, some people are naturally good. I've met some, right? They don't need all this. But most of us, we're just born selfish, right? And we need to be pushed through these experiences. And so God, in a way, is saying to Job, I bless, but I also curse. And both of these are acts of love, right? We need to accept that God is not just there to cocoon us and comfort us and give us nice things. God is also there sometimes to challenge us, to make us, sweat and weep and cry out in despair. But eventually we see that ultimately this was a journey worth traveling, right? So that's the three things I want you to remember. Are you seeing now the explosion, right? See, go ahead.
Yeah, and this also be interpreted as like, the three friends, that would be like their own challenge for them to be punished in that way. Because God,
Yes.
God is saying, like, you cannot take the lead. That is not what I am saying. So
Very
you
good.
have to be punished, and now we're going through the same process of Job.
Yes, and so he's saying the friends, right, in a way, in their being punished, is already God challenging them and shaking them up, right? Absolutely, right? So I hope you're seeing, right, how this amazing landscape is painting such a different vision of God that we had in the prologue, right? The vision that Job had of God in the prologue was very narrow. He was a God who was predictable, who was blessing me when I do the right things. It was a God he was afraid of him. This was a God, that might destroy his whole life, right? And indeed, in a way, he was right, right? And now we have this explosion of color, right? As though God is saying, here you were in this tiny little box, living your life, thinking of me as a tiny little box too, right? And now this experience you have gone through has exploded this narrow framework. You are now invited. Remember those three things, right? An invitation for Job to come out of this narrow place, legalistic, rule-based, fear of God-based, right? Place to live. Don't be afraid to live. Don't be afraid to suffer. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? Enter life, because this is where I am, right? Second thing we saw, just reviewing, right? Second thing we saw, keep on forgetting. Yes, the allusion to the creation story, God is saying through death, through suffering comes life and rebirth. Let us remember this, right? And the last point with regards to God himself, right? God is not just there to cocoon us and comfort us like we are taught, right? We come weeping to God each time there's something wrong, not knowing that sometimes he's the one that sent that something wrong, right? And so God is also there to challenge us and shake us to our core, right? That we may grow. Okay, any questions so far on this part? This is a very important part. Or any last comment before we go to the so-called happy ending? Anything in Zoom? Sorry, guys, I keep on forgetting you. Okay. All right, let's go to this so-called happy ending. We have do you mind if I go over 5 minutes? Can I do that? Have 15 minutes for this? Okay, so we can really finish. Okay, so how many of you thought it was a happy ending? Raise your hands. You can do it also in the Zoom, your virtual hands. Wait, nobody thought it was a happy ending? You didn't like this ending?
You're a hat.
Huh? Okay, you can raise go like this. Okay, half happy ending. Most of you, how many thought there wasn't a happy ending? You didn't like that ending? Raise your hand, just to see if you're not just sitting there being apathetic. Yes, I was right. You're sitting there being apathetic. Okay, so let's start with those who thought there was a happy ending. Tell me, what is the happy ending? You wanna?
I do think it was a happy ending just because in the end he grew and he became a different person. He went through that time of metamorphosis and became a better version of himself. God blessed him and he basically got everything that he had lost back. My only reason that I feel like it's not a happy ending is I feel like there could have been more transparency and truth, and without that, it kind of dilutes from how happy the ending could have been. Just in that, I think someone had mentioned it earlier, as if getting everything doubled completely negates what he went through.
Yes, there's a
like
problem.
A parent who loses a child and gets more will always remember the first set of kids because they're yours. So I just feel like that level of transparency in a wisdom book that's supposed to be challenging and supposed to kind of like help you see the broader aspect that pain can still reside in happy moments, I feel like should have been in there.
Okay, very good, right? So she's mentioning, right, this is a strange happy ending because can you, like, who mentioned that? One of you, right? Can you replace, can you just like, oh, you lost your kids, here's a new set, I mean, this part is really, has been, many commentators have been stuck on this, like you, right? It's like, what is this, right? So let's try another, see, you want to try?
I mean, like, before hearing your talk before about, like, what God really meant, I feel like it was like it's like a very traditional happy ending where, the bad guys are punished,
Yes.
the good guys get rewarded, and everything.
It's a Hollywood ending.
Yeah, but, I mean, the only, like, criticism I have that makes it, like, so for me is that, like, God still doesn't answer the fact why are there still bad people that are wild, that are running rampant, that doesn't believe in God, that kills or does anything to kill, pillages, or hurts without any regard for human life.
Yes.
They still run crazy.
Remember, this is not the question of the text, right? Question of the text is why the righteous suffer, not why the wicked prosper, right? But you're right. In the later parts of the class, we will respond to that, right? But the question you're adding here to the to the problematic, right? The question simply was, why me righteous I suffer? And he's mentioning, well, what about the wicked that prosper? Of course, it's part of the equation. You're right. It's part of the question. This is not addressed at all, right? Absolutely. Okay. Yes.
I just have a question. We that Job went through the suffering and transformed. Where are we getting that from?
Oh, we're getting there. So first of all, we did.
The text that he transformed didn't really say much about
Yes,
him.
we're seeing. Last time we saw the process, right? We saw how he's become confused and he's become. But this is not yet the transformation. You're right. We have to wait now until the epilogue. I'm going to show you. Yes.
I think that I don't know if I would say it's a happy ending, but I think it's a successful ending because it shows that despite what Job went through, the suffering, the difficulties, he was able to reestablish contact with like an orderly way of life. So he was able to rediscover that order and that kind of consistency even after going through all of that. And I think that shows that he was able to handle his suffering properly because in the beginning he almost gave in to becoming a resentful person. That's like the challenge of any suffering to become resentful. And he almost went down that path, but then he kind of took God's message and he didn't become resentful. He was humbled, and that humility, I think, allowed him to kind of just come to terms with the suffering and then reestablish,
Very good. So Inoyatov is saying, right, that in a way, one of the, and I've seen you said that too, and I'll come to that. The happy ending is not what it seems. That's what I'm getting from you guys. So I'm going to go back to what you both said, but let's first, oh yeah, Amoroso, you want to add something?
Sort of, I guess I'd say it's more bittersweet because yes, he did grow, but sort of like what we've been saying, like, his original set of kids did die, and I think that's probably one of the most traumatic things anyone with children can go through if they die before you. Like, that's absolutely probably one of the worst things.
Yeah.
And I feel like God's just like, here's so many kids. Just
Yes.
Like, it reminds me of like when
Yes.
a parent, like maybe they lost someone's like, their kid's pet, and they're like, oh, won't tell the difference.
Yes.
And besides that, I think it's interesting that, so we were talking in the last class, that the first thing that we talked about Job is his possessions, not like that he's a righteous person. And then in the ending, his possessions are mentioned before his kids.
Yes, I'm coming to that. You're on the right track. You're on the path of truth, Amoroso. Very good. Epstein, I see you. Go ahead. Epstein?
So I don't think it's a happy ending. I don't think it's a sad ending. It's not really an ending. We're back where we started.
Yes.
And you say after you go through something, right? Okay, I'm done. Life's over. I'm moving on. Blah blah blah. No, you're kind of waiting for the next thing to happen, the next essence of life, whatever lesson it may be. There's no real ending to the story because it's in the middle of somebody's life. So I wouldn't necessarily call this an ending.
Died at a very great age. I don't know if you saw that.
But
Died at a very great age. So it does kind of.
yeah, but it doesn't really.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's there's still more happening, right? You can sense
Right.
opening. Very good. Okay.
I mean, if he doesn't have a change in perspective and changed his whole life after this, I don't know what he missed.
Okay, good. So let's get to that. Let's get to what seems to be the problematic happy ending, not the, how shall I put it? So first of all, let's remember, this is the epilogue. What did I say about the prologue and the epilogue? What? Yes, right? These are the sarcastic, ironic, right? These are the ironic texts. There is irony here. Nothing should be taken at face value, right? So when we read this here, let's read together, page 91. Second paragraph. Then, right, remember what just happened, the magnificence of the poetry, right? The grandeur of this landscape. We've just come out of this massive, ecstatic experience with God, right? The expansion of boundaries, the invitation to enter the circle of life. And then you have this. Then the Lord returned all Job's possessions and gave him twice as much as he had before. All his relatives came to celebrate. And then the next paragraph, Job blessed the end of Job's life. The Lord blessed the end of Job's life more than the beginning. Now he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, 1,000 donkeys. Where are we now? Where are we? What does this remind you of? This list of animals? Back in the prologue. Why are we back to square one? That's what I am asking the text, right? The text, this ending, as though everything Job went through, which was really to teach him, right, that true spirituality is not about happiness, something else, right? All of a sudden we're thrown back at the prologue. And so we know, just because of that here the author is making fun of the traditional view that if you follow God and you go through, by the way, this is traditional Jewish, Muslim, and Christian interpretation of this text. They say, see, he was faithful, and in the end, he was happy, right? And the author here is alluding to this with an ironic smirk on his face. Read how wooden it is, right? Then the Lord kind of like, hi ho, and this is kind of like the dwarfs in Snow White, right? I'm seeing this like this kind of like very wooden, right? Then he returned kind of like on a happy note, Pollyanna type, right? He returned all the possessions, and now he had in a long list. We know this is not the true happy ending because we know what just happened, right? And so here, why the author writes this, I believe, and make sure you write this down, he is here making fun of the traditional interpretation of suffering. That yes, if you're faithful and you suffer and you stay faithful, which is not what Job did. Job did not stay faithful. He became rebellious and arrogant and out of control, right? He did not become, he wasn't, thanking God and praising God through the trouble. No, he did not act in the right way, right? So he did not remain faithful. And so we have here a kind of making fun of this view that, if you're faithful, in the end, God will reward you. We know this text is not about reward or material reward. It's not about happiness, right? There's something deeper going on. And so my invitation to you is to ask, what is then the true happy ending? And a couple of you already mentioned the transformation of Job. There's another one. We'll get to it. But first of all, true happy ending is not that he got his possessions back. That's where the author is making fun. He's saying, imagine, right? Oh, here are your children back, right? Here are some new children, right? The author clearly is making fun of this view that somehow the pain of the past can be erased, right? So the true happy ending, number one, is what you guys pointed out, the transformation, right? Job has moved from being robotic to being a man, from being submissive to actually talking face to face with God, right? Job, in a way, before, and he says it himself, he had heard of God, but now his eyes have seen him, right? This is a man who has now finally developed a genuine spiritual connection. He is not anymore hearing about God, he is talking to God, right? This is the difference actually between the friends and Job. The friends are talking about God, but Job is talking to God. And this is the path that we are invited to take. Instead of talking about God, or instead of hearing about God, the invitation is, in the midst of the suffering, let us have the guts and the chutzpah to talk to God, right? This is the path, right, that is open to us, right? Especially when we're emotional and frustrated and angry, we are invited not to repress it, but to, right, really express it directly, right? So we have this transformation on the one hand, spiritual transformation, but we have another transformation which is hidden here in the second to last paragraph. I want you to look at that. There is a strange mention in the second to last paragraph that is unusual, that is different from the prologue. The author now is moving away from the kind of scenario of the prologue. What do you see as the difference between that third paragraph and what we saw in the prologue? What? Third paragraph, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, page 91, third paragraph. Yes.
That his kids have names.
Yes, which kids have names?
The three daughters.
Yes, this is unusual. Was anybody else shocked? He mentions the boys in passing, right? But the daughters, beautiful names. It's better in Hebrew. It kind of sounds weird in English, right? But and normally, by the way, this is countercultural. If you read the rest of the Hebrew Bible, normally the boys are named and the girls in passing, right? Not named. Here, just flips the patriarchal culture and names the daughters. What does this tell you about Job doing this? Who is this man now? Yes, Michel and then Inoyatov and I guess Goldstein, maybe? Yes.
It kind of shows that he's authentic because he's not the norm anymore. He's just like Job.
Okay, number one, right? Job is not stuck in the norm anymore. He's not just walking the line, following the trend. He is his own self. That's the second transformation, right? First transformation, spiritual maturity, talking to God, a breach has been opened between him and God, which wasn't there before. Before he was just following the rules. There was no God. Now there is a breach that has been opened where he's directly communicating spiritual maturity. Second thing, he is now thinking outside of the box. He has found his own unique self, right? He has found himself. But what else does it tell you? That he's naming the daughters, which is unusual in the patriarchal context that he is dwelling in. What else does it tell you? Yes, go ahead.
Rebellious.
Sorry?
Rebellious.
Okay, absolutely. We have here a subversion of patriarchy, which is very rare in the Hebrew Bible. Usually the subversions of patriarchy that you see in the Hebrew Bible, it's the women who are doing that. Certain texts with very strong female figures are doing this. Here you have a man who has become sensitive enough, mature enough, human enough to perceive that the structure of patriarchy is not sufficient, not working for him anymore. And he's large enough of mind, right? His mind has expanded to the point. You can see how the suffering has expanded this man's mind, right? He is now able to see, he's able to decipher in the culture what is wrong in the culture. This is very rare, right? He has reached such a level of expansion that he's able to pinpoint within his own culture the problems, the discrepancies, and he's flipping the culture, right? He's in a way becoming a pioneer. He's becoming a visionary. He's becoming, right, a model of change, right? Yes, Amoroso, I see a question sprouting. Yes?
Reminds me of how some people don't really like the church, but they still have a relationship with God and is able to use the church as like a medium to talk about where they are. Just makes me think of that, like how he's still going outside his cultural norm and what he's supposed to do.
Yes, absolutely, right? He's no more, his spirituality is not anymore entrenched in the institution. He is now exploding in the institution, and his spirituality, in a way, is outside of the walls of the church or the synagogue or of the mosque, right? He has expanded, right, beyond those walls. This is excellent. Anything else that you're seeing in the are you seeing better the transformation? You're always a tough one for me.
I have so many questions and comments.
Yes, of course. You can always stay after with your questions and comments, as you probably will. Anything else? Yes, go ahead.
Could you also see this as maybe like Job, like his actions as an image of what's going on internally in terms of him finding value in things he otherwise wouldn't have found value?
Yes.
Kind of like finding value in having your own voice and being your own person, through the lens of finding value in females as well as
Absolutely. Right? He's flipping the culture. He's able to see value in that which did not. His values have changed, right? This is how deep the shift has occurred. Is even his values have changed. So absolutely, yes, something very deep has changed morally in him. Not only spiritually, but morally he has progressed, right? Excellent. Okay. Let's stop now. But of course, right, I'm here. You guys can stay if you want to talk further. Don't go yet because I have to remind you of your assignment because we have a whole week. Next week, we begin Maimonides, right? So you need to do 2 things, 3, 4 things. Number 1, you listen to the introductory lecture on Maimonides in the YouTube channel, right? Number 2, you do the audio question. Number 3, you read the assigned text. And number 4, you do the reading assignment and you hand in audio question reading assignment before class in the drive. All right, guys, I will see you.